Hello, welcome to Season 9 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. The theme of this season is 100 Years of Horror. We're going to watch two horror movies from every decade, from 1920 to 2020, in chronological order. We want to see where horror came from, how it's changed, and maybe even make some predictions about where it's going. If you want to see the full list of movies we'll be reviewing this season and follow along, then check out our website at thehorrific.com. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So this season we're doing 100 Years of Horror, and we're doing two movies from every decade from 1920 to 2020. And one of the early ones that we did was Nosferatu, which was a vampire movie from super way back in the day. It's one that we'd both heard about, and it was banned in a lot of places because they didn't get the appropriate rights from Bram Stoker's estate, and it was mostly destroyed, but over time it's been kind of rewoven together and made available from the surviving copies. And so we got to see that, and now that we're in the 70s, we thought it would be a good idea to do Nosferatu the Vampire, just to see, you know, how this movie or this idea has evolved over time. So this movie was basically the same story, but just set in made in Germany in the 70s.
Yeah. And I would just like to start off by apologizing for my list. However, in my defense, we've watched every horror movies from the 70s.
Yeah. Well, and it was a cool idea, right? Not having any context. It was oh yeah, this legendary Nosferatu, the original silent horror film, that we've always heard about, over time. That's going to be really cool. Oh, and then there's one from the 70s too. That'll be cool to follow it up and see. And the whole purpose of this season is to go through and see the evolution of horror movies over time. So seeing the modernized version of this early classic seemed to fit well with that. So I don't hold it against you. I just want to say before we get started, okay, I forgive you.
Good. But also, IMDb can suck my ass because they have it for 7.5 on there, and generally, they're pretty good with the ratings.
So this movie sort of inexplicably to me over time has gotten really positive reviews from critics.
Yeah.
And I don't get that one bit.
Right. 100%.
But anyway, we're getting too far into it. I'm going to do the description, and then you can do your fun facts, and then we will get into the very slow-paced, very self-reflective, and quiet details.
Sounds good.
In 1979, 20th Century Fox brought us Nosferatu the Vampire. This movie was written, produced, and directed by Werner Herzog and is yet another retelling of the events described in Bram Stoker's Dracula. Over the course of an hour and 47 minutes, that felt like it and then some, we see the story of Harker, Lucy, Renfield, and Count Dracula play out about as you would expect. This movie was made on a budget of 2.5 million Deutschmarks, which is $100 billion in Bitcoin, and has curiously, in my opinion, received consistently positive reviews from critics through the years. It can currently be streamed on Amazon at no extra cost to Prime members.
First off, I'd like to say I appreciate that comment that you added in there. It means that you listen, and that's a good trait. Second off, I'm impressed that you said Werner, because it's German.
Yeah.
You're just on point today.
I do what I can. What did you learn about this movie?
So, the rats in this film supposedly used to be white, and they painted all of them gray to be in there, because gray rats weren't available.
Okay.
Now, also, Werner Herzog went on record say that he felt like the rats in this film behaved better than Klaus Kinski, who was Nosferatu. Apparently he was a pretty terrible person on the set. This, like you kind of talked about this movie was made after Bram Stoker's Dracula had expired. Werner Herzog decided to restore the original names of the characters while still following the movie blueprint laid out by F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu. That's all I got. That's all I can stomach. I'm sorry. I just can't.
Yeah. So this movie was, to me, it was almost like a sort of serious retelling of Bram Stoker's Dracula, but without any horror elements to the movie making. Yeah. So, like, there was no music that created, like, tenseness. There was no real action. There wasn't really any gore. It just was kind of flat. Like this movie to me kind of felt like 2 hours of plain yogurt.
That's actually a really good way of putting it. So my thought with this film, so what this basically seemed like to me, the Nosferatu film that we watched from 1979, seems like it's one of those made for TV Hallmark style movies.
Yeah.
And for some reason, everyone loves this film. Like, it's on the 1001 movies you must see before you die. So obviously that list is now soiled, in my opinion. However,
I'd rather die.
I know. I'll never do that. But like Roger Ebert went on, like he loves this film too. Like, multiple people really enjoy it, and I didn't dislike it because I liked the original, but like, I think I was really let down because my thought when I picked the movie out was like, okay, well, this is legendary film, right? The Nosferatu original. Like, you always see, like, that's inspiration for multiple Dracula. Yeah, I mean, just like, you know, silent film, but it's lasted this long, and so I was like, surely it can only get better over time with technology. And I was fooled for sure, but like, where I kind of struggled with it is that the whole made for TV, like, part of it. Now, this is kind of hypocritical in me because I like Christmas movies that are like the made for TV ones for some reason. But when it comes to this, it's just like, no, I can't stand it. Like, I want that gore. I want that blood. I want, like, the stuff that, in my opinion, makes a lot of horror movies great. It doesn't have to have those to make it a good horror film. But
intensity or suspense
or
dread or anything other than sheer boredom is, like, necessary for a horror movie to land.
And, you know, I felt like it was just it was a monotone film where, like, even, like, the screams were just monotone. Like, if you're gonna remake something that I think people would consider legendary, then, like, you have to, like, up the ante. Like, you have to take it a step further, and just adding dialogue doesn't do it. You know, adding vocals to it doesn't do it. Like, when the original didn't have to have vocalization to make it a good film.
The original was a better horror movie, hands down.
I agree, completely. I would rather watch the original over this one, like, any day. You know, for sure. But it was just, I think for me, I may have just started getting frustrated. Yeah. And then once I realized what I was kind of in for the rest of the time, it was just like, you know, whole frustration of, like, just getting mad, like, I can't believe this is the case. You know, like, this is what's happening. Like, I was looking for, I think even, like, when we were talking about the list, I said I was looking forward to this one because I'm curious to see the difference, you know, and change. Mm-hmm. And it's like, this is embarrassing, the change that's been made over the years. Like, that shows that we haven't really done shit for, you know, 57 years or however long it was.
This did not feel like an evolution of the horror genre at all. And we've seen plenty of stuff from the 70s that was. Yeah. So I think we just got kind of unlucky with this one. Yeah. Because it was not trying to be a horror movie. No. This almost felt like more of a almost like kind of Victorian classic literature retelling of a popular book. Like this felt like the type of thing that they would have like wheeled the TV in to your classroom and put on in like English class because your teacher was sick or something. Yeah. And it's like it is very safe. It is very predictable, and it is a fairly accurate representation of the source material. But it was just like, it felt like everybody was just kind of like whispering to each other the whole time. Like there was no emotion in anyone in any of that. And I got really bored. Like this is okay. So example, Dracula meets Lucy for the first time. And it's like super, like you have the idea, oh, this could be scary. You know, like this could be an intense scene, like she's in danger. But then they just have like a long conversation. A very long, very monotone conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the end of it. So there's never even really like any conflict or anything. And it just, I don't know. This is the closest I've come to not finishing a movie that we've done for this podcast.
I stopped it in anger and then started it back up just so it wouldn't be the first, you know, like wouldn't be the first one that, you know, we couldn't do. But I mean, like, so, and to explain like where the frustration comes from with like ratings and stuff like that with me is like Texas Chainsaw Massacre that came out in 1974. So 5 years before this one. That's like legit iconic horror. You see it everywhere. Horror convention. I mean, everywhere.
For sure. Yeah.
A fantastic movie. One of my favorites. That's rated the same on IMDb that this one is. It's like, how? Like, are these people, they can't be horror fans.
No, I agree. That's exactly the point I was going to make, was that it's not fans of horror that are upvoting this one. Yeah.
So, I mean, it just got, it got dry, you know, like where, maybe the 1922 version was like, we allowed some of the stuff to happen because filmmaking was, you know, just new basically. And it was like, okay, well, yeah, like that was obviously overreaction in the acting, but they came from doing plays and stuff like that. But with this, is like they tried to do some of that, but it was just so like there's just a monotone feeling throughout the whole thing. The colors in it were just like hazed over, but not in a good way. Muted.
Yeah.
It reminded me of A Christmas Story, or what was the made-for-TV one with Patrick, the bald Patrick guy, the old one that everyone loves. The one that has like Scrooge in it. Anyway, it reminded me of like a made-for-TV Christmas one. That Patrick Stewart was in it, but which is like supposed to be like kind of I don't know. It was just bland. This was a bland movie.
It was
a letdown.
And even like the vampire, he basically just looked like Billy Corgan with fake teeth. Like it didn't.
Wait, that wasn't Billy Corgan? Just kidding. Sorry.
But there just wasn't. So I feel like the original, and we talked about this before, but I feel like the original definitely benefited from being in black and white because you didn't have as clear a view of some of the special effects stuff. Mm-hmm. But I felt like it also kind of broke ground. Like for a movie in the 1920s to have that coffin like lift up and move on its own and stuff, there were some things to that really kind of caught my attention in a good way. And that one I feel like was definitely trying to be like spooky and scary, obviously by the standards of the 1920s, but I felt like it at least was trying to be a horror movie. And I don't feel like this one had that ambition at all. I don't think anyone expected anyone in the theater to gasp or faint at this one. You know what I mean? Like it just, I don't know. And so the thing I kept coming back to is like, okay, so Werner wrote, produced, and directed this one. And like what inspired him to do that? Like what was the thing he was trying to accomplish or communicate with this movie? Because it just didn't. I don't get it.
Well,
I guess I'm just missing something, but yeah.
here's, is it, were you doing it just because the copyright was available? Like it was finally like lifted so you could do it? And to touch on, based on like what you're talking about with the Nosferatu, like the way he looked better in a 1922 movie than he did 1,000%. In this one. And it's like, how, with all the updates that we've come through with makeup and all that. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 5 years before is a prime example of some of the crazy stuff you could see in film. How is it like, he didn't look scary. He just looked deformed. Like it wasn't like a...
Yeah. Those fingernails were not functional.
No, and like the teeth were like, you could tell they were like fake and like...
Oh yeah, and just dumb.
It looked like Billy tooth, or like,
the Billy Bob teeth.
Billy Bob teeth, yeah. It was just like, this is intense. And what's funny about this as well is, so we were supposed to record we usually record on Tuesdays, and I was heading down to come visit you, and it was Tuesday, and I was just like, I have a bunch of stuff to do, and also like not looking forward to doing this, so let's save it until after the trip. Like, let's not ruin this good mood that I'm in, kind of thing. Yeah. And you definitely understood, it was just like, because we try not to talk about films about, I don't know if we do it on purpose. We just don't. We want to learn about what the other person thinks while we're talking now or during the podcast. And it was just like, both of us, we just knew it was a shit show. And
well, it was not. So the whole point of this is to discuss horror movies and what makes them horror movies and how good they are at being horror movies. And this wasn't a horror movie, and it didn't try to be a horror movie. So, swing and a miss.
Yeah. But, it was also PG, so what do you expect? So,
now, the one thing I will say, I did, because I always try to find at least one positive in every movie we watch, and sometimes that just gives me something to do because there's not much to pay attention to otherwise.
Yeah.
Case in point. But I did really like the camera work in a few of the scenes. And there was one early on where Harker is in the castle, and he wakes up after, being there and eating dinner the night before, and the camera is just kind of following him. He's walking towards it a lot. And he gets up and he looks at kind of the food on the table, and it's just dead silent and super kind of creepy because you don't really know what's going on. And then he turns and you just get that little view of those two little holes in his neck. And I thought that the way they did that, it just keeping it really subtle there at first, to where if you were looking for it, you'd see it, but not holding your hand and zooming the camera in or anything. I was just okay, cool. That this could be starting to make a turn. Maybe we're getting ready to start a, more of a thing down kind of the more creepy or psychological horror type thing. And then it just didn't.
Yeah. It really, really kind of fell flat.
Yeah.
This is definitely, I feel a movie that they would show in middle school, when you don't have anything to learn, right before you're out on break.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's, yeah. I don't know. It's, and even so another thing that was weird to me about it is there was not really any conflict or fight when he would be around people. You know what I mean? There never was a struggle to get away. It just.
Yeah, I think, it was so I think the prime example is when Jonathan is in the bed and Nosferatu comes in, and there's just an awkward amount of time from when Jonathan wakes up and sees him to when anything. It was just he was just standing there looking, and it was it's such an unrealistic expectation. And if you're trying to build suspense, it wasn't working because and I know that I gotta stop thinking literal in some situations, but if I wake up, I've punched a wall because I thought I saw someone. It's just a it's just it's screw this, I'm swinging, and it's someone wakes up and if I'm at your house on vacation and you were to do that to me, I probably would still swing because it's like something's not right here.
Yeah,
like this is not normal. You don't. Yeah, so I was
go into that like fight or flight.
Yeah, so I just got mad. But this just fell flat. This isn't one that'll ever make any of my list other than like right there with Under Skin. I would rather watch Under Skin than this again.
We finally found one.
We did.
Congratulations, universe.
I'll tell you off air why, but well, yeah. I don't know. You did it. You did it.
Yeah.
And I did it to myself is the worst part about it. I've been kicking my own ass for 2 weeks now, Daniel.
Yeah. Living with your own regret. It is more cruel not to die was something Dracula said in this movie, and it's also a thing I felt while watching this movie.
This also made me like miss like when we did like Del and Tucker versus Evil, Tucker and Del versus Evil, because I just wish that I could, hear.
Be entertained.
What's that?
Be entertained.
Yeah, be entertained and like, that's all I got for this episode.
Yeah, and I guess maybe there was some like desire to think more about like psychology, like what would it be like from the subjective experience of a person that used to be human but has been cursed in such a way that he can't die and has to live through the ages and watch everyone else die, and maybe more like capturing more of that like philosophical side of Dracula was something that was being attempted, but that's just not interesting to me when there's no horror to go along with it. So
right, yeah, swing and a miss, but we'll be back next week with The Dead Zone.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.